She was given to him as a prize of war, but ended up saving his soul. The wind came in waves over the Mojave sands, whispering secrets no one had time to hear. Heat rippled in the distance, making the horizon shimmer like a broken mirror. To the west, the sun hung low, swollen, angry, bleeding orange into the desert sky. Sergeant Mason Carter squinted into the glare. His boots crunched across the dry earth as he approached the loading zone outside Outpost Delta 17, a small but heavily secured perimeter of steel and sandbags. It wasn't much, just a concrete bunker, a comms dish, and 3 armed men at all times. But it was where high-value cargo was processed now that the war had gone cold. It had been 6 months since the last recorded battle against the Nerethi, the humanoid alien species that Earth had barely managed to defeat. Most were dead. Some had fled to deeper space. A few had been captured, and one of them was being handed to him today. "Package for you, Sarge," said the corporal at the gate, not looking Mason in the eye. "Clearance came through an hour ago. She's yours now." "She?" Mason asked, voice flat. The corporal just nodded toward the transport container behind him, a box of reinforced glass and metal, sitting silent under the burning sun. The interior was dimly lit. Something moved inside, slow and hesitant. Mason stepped closer. Through the glare and the dust, he saw her. She looked human at first glance, but only just. Her skin was pale like polished ivory, too even, too flawless. Her hair was a luminous, golden-white cascade that shimmered unnaturally under the weak light. She was small, couldn't have stood taller than 5 feet, and impossibly delicate, like something grown in a lab or carved from bone. Her eyes opened as he approached. They were violet, not just purple, violet, deep and luminous and unnerving. They locked onto his, unblinking, and he felt a strange weight press into his chest. Mason straightened. "What the hell is this?" "She's classified Nerethi, HX-12. No name on file. They said she's a hybrid variant, docile, trainable, emotionally responsive, considered a morale asset." The corporal looked away again. "Command authorized her transfer as part of your distinguished service compensation." "Compensation," Mason repeated, jaw tightening. "For what?" "For surviving Sol 9 and dragging 6 men back from a suicide zone," the corporal muttered. "You want her or not, Sergeant?" There was a silence. The wind blew a curl of dust between them. Mason said nothing. He turned toward the container again, eyes narrowing. She hadn't moved, but her gaze hadn't left his. That night, the outpost was quiet. Most of the other soldiers kept their distance, pretending she didn't exist. Mason carried her containment case to his quarters himself, refusing the offer of automated handlers. When he finally released the magnetic seal and the door hissed open, she stepped out barefoot, silent, watching him like a deer watches a hunter. He offered her water. She took it with both hands, sipped, then stared at the metal cup like it was made of stars. "You got a name?" he asked. She didn't answer. He pointed to himself. "Mason." Her lips moved slowly. Mason." The sound was soft, strange, her voice layered with a slight harmonic echo, like 2 frequencies blending into one. It wasn't just exotic. It was haunting. He gestured to her. "You." A pause. Then she placed a hand to her chest. "IRI," she said. "IRI. VAR." He nodded once. "Okay, IRI." For the next few days, Mason kept a routine. He trained in the mornings, maintained gear, filed reports. IRI stayed in the room. She didn't try to leave. She didn't speak unless spoken to. But she watched everything. The way his fingers moved when cleaning his rifle. The way he grunted when rising from a crouch. The way he paused at the old photo of a girl taped to the mirror. Her presence was quiet, weightless. And yet, he felt it constantly. At night, he'd hear her murmuring in that strange, musical language. Not quite singing, not quite speaking. The sound twisted something in his chest. He started dreaming again. Bad dreams. Flames, screams, blinding light. Then her face, pale and glowing in the darkness, reaching toward him. He never touched her. He wouldn't. But something had already shifted. One evening, he came back late, blood on his knuckles. Some idiot recruit had mouthed off about alien pets and war trophies. Mason didn't reply, just broke the guy's nose and walked out. When he entered the quarters, IRI stood up fast. You are harmed. It's nothing, he muttered. She moved closer. He could smell the strange metallic sweet scent of her, like ozone after a lightning storm. She reached out, fingers trembling, and brushed a hand lightly over his bruised skin. Her touch was like static, warm and electric. Mason stared at her, frozen. Then she whispered, I was not born to be given. The desert wind howled against the aluminum walls of the outpost, rising in pitch like a warning. Inside his quarters, Mason sat on the edge of his cot, staring at the bandage on his knuckles. The blood had dried, crusted brown, stiff beneath the gauze. IRI stood a few feet away, unmoving. You shouldn't have touched me, he muttered without looking up. Silence. Then, softly, why? Mason finally raised his eyes. Hers were waiting, violet and unflinching. Because that's not what this is, he said. You were handed to me like you were a thing, a reward. I'm not playing that game. Still, she didn't move. You were different from the others. Not really, he said, just slower to break. Later that night, he couldn't sleep. He sat outside, on a low crate, rifle propped against his knee. The stars stretched forever over the desert sky, untouched by light pollution or city breath. It should have been peaceful, but his chest felt tight, heavy. He heard footsteps behind him, quiet, soft. You should be inside, he said. I do not like enclosed spaces, IRI said. Mason turned slightly. You were in one when they brought you. Her gaze drifted upward. I was sedated. He hesitated. How much do you remember? Everything. The wind picked up, sweeping a fine spray of dust across the ground. Her hair danced in the air, glowing faintly in the starlight, like fiber-optic strands of gold. They told us you were experimental, Mason said, genetically adjusted, Narithi hybrid, bred to be compliant. I was not bred, she said, voice sharp. I was born. Mason looked at her. Her jaw was set now tight. Emotion, unmistakably human, flickered across her face. Then what are you doing here? He asked. IRI's eyes fell to the sand. I was captured near the ruins of Artellon, she said. The others with me were not taken alive. I spoke to your people. They said they would not harm me if I agreed to cooperate. I agreed. And now you're mine. She nodded once. Mason exhaled. Jesus. The next day, trouble came from command. A coded message appeared on his screen. Prepare subject HX-12 for off-site transfer. Clearance Omega, 7. Departure in 72 hours. Mason stared at the blinking cursor. It didn't make sense. She had just arrived. HX-12 was not a test subject anymore. Not to him. She was a person. Intelligent. Conscious. Afraid. Calm. Beautiful in a way that wasn't even about attraction. Just real. Undeniably alive. He slammed the monitor shut. That evening, during dinner, IRI spoke again. You're leaving, she said. I can sense it. No, Mason said. You are. Her eyes widened. I got an order. They want to move you somewhere. Some black site, probably. No details. No return date. IRI didn't blink. Will they hurt me? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. IRI, he said, leaning forward. You need to tell me what you are. Not what they said you are. The truth. She hesitated. Then, quietly, I am the last daughter of a science caste. I carry memory strands. Data, encoded in blood. Designs, knowledge. Everything the Narithi knew about terraforming, war physics, energy cores, brain-link interfaces. That's why they want me. Mason leaned back, stunned. You're a vault. No, she said. I'm a weapon that thinks. He couldn't breathe for a moment. All this time they had lied. She wasn't a prize. She was a tool. One so valuable it could reshape entire militaries. She wasn't sent to him as a gift. She was being stored. You said they wouldn't hurt you, he said, voice low. They said that, IRI replied. But I know what humans do to things they don't understand. He stood, started pacing. IRI, if they get their hands on that kind of data, it's not just you who's at risk. It's everyone, she finished. Yes. There was a silence between them, thick, humming. Then Mason said, You need to leave. She looked up, confused. How? I don't know yet. But you're not going to that black site. Not on my watch. She tilted her head. Why would you disobey your own kind? Mason stopped. He looked at her, really looked at her. You weren't given to me. You were thrown away. Then, softly, I know what that feels like. Mason hadn't slept in 36 hours. He sat alone in the outpost's weapons bay, disassembling his rifle by muscle memory, his mind spinning with logistics and regrets. Every few seconds, his eyes drifted to the terminal across the room, where the transfer orders still blinked on-screen like a countdown to betrayal. 72 hours. Now down to 32. IRI was in the room behind him, silent, waiting. She never asked what he planned to do, but the way she watched him, quietly, constantly, made it clear she knew he was unraveling. She could feel it. That was the most terrifying thing about her. She didn't guess. She knew. By the next morning, the atmosphere in the outpost had changed. 3 new soldiers had arrived. Unannounced, unscheduled, black gear, no insignia, no names. They didn't speak to anyone except the captain, and when they walked past Mason's quarters, one of them paused just long enough to glance at the sealed door behind him. He knew, in that instant, that IRI wasn't going anywhere willingly. They were here to take her, by force if necessary. That night, Mason made a decision. He disabled the outpost's drone uplink and encrypted the surveillance feed under his own access code. Then he pulled IRI aside and opened the hidden weapons locker beneath the floor. Inside, a sidearm, 3 cartridges, a combat ration pack, and an old dust-covered duffel bag. You're leaving tonight, he said. IRI tilted her head, calm as ever. They'll hunt you for this. I'm counting on it, Mason said. Because if they're chasing me, they won't catch you. They moved just before midnight, under a new moon, using the gaps in the patrol grid Mason had mapped over the last 6 years. The desert stretched before them like a graveyard made of glass and fire. Rocks shimmered with residual heat. Somewhere behind them, inside the outpost, the silent operatives would soon realize she was gone. Mason kept his pace steady, eyes scanning for movement, rifle slung tight across his chest. IRI followed with unnatural grace, her bare feet making no sound on the sand. After half a mile, she finally spoke. You're risking your entire life for someone you barely know. He didn't stop walking. You're not someone. You're IRI. Her voice lowered. What if I become dangerous? Mason glanced at her. Then I'll be the first to know, and the last to run. They reached the ravine just before dawn, an old mining cut that ran deep beneath the sand. Mason had stashed supplies here years ago in case of a desert siege. It wasn't much, a canteen, a flare gun, and an emergency shelter, but it would buy them time. They crouched in the shade of the rocks, breathing hard. Then Ira did something she hadn't done since the day she arrived. She touched his hand, not gently, not accidentally, deliberately. Mason, she said softly, there's something I haven't told you. He looked at her, eyes narrowing. My kind, the ones like me, weren't just built to remember, she said. We were designed to merge. He froze. Merge with what? With hosts. With others. It was our last failsafe. If our species fell, we were meant to bond with alien minds, to preserve what we were, what we knew. He pulled his hand away. So what? You're here to take over. She shook her head quickly. No, not take. Fuse. It's not domination. It's coexistence. Shared memory. Shared soul. That's not comfort. Mason snapped. That's a possession. It's consent-based, IRI said. I can't merge unless the other accepts. I wouldn't do it without your will. He turned away, jaw clenched. You said you weren't bred, he said coldly. But this was programmed into you. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, you're right. A high-pitched whine cracked the sky. A drone. Too close. Too fast. Mason grabbed IRI and yanked her back against the wall of the ravine. The shadow passed overhead, scanning, hovering. They froze. The drone circled once, then continued west. They had minutes at most. We don't have time to argue, Mason said. We move north. There's a civilian trade route past the dry basin. We hijack a vehicle, disappear. IRI didn't move. IRI. She looked up at him. Calm, still, unreadable. I need to ask you something, she said. And I need the truth. He exhaled. Now. Yes. She stepped closer. If I were fully human, would you have kissed me by now? His breath caught. I don't, that's not fair. Answer. I don't know, he said, voice hoarse. Maybe. She nodded slowly. That's enough. Far above them, the first rays of sunlight were starting to bleed over the ridge. And down in the valley, the black vans were coming. The black vans moved like sharks, silent, smooth, coordinated. Kicking up trails of dust that blurred the horizon, they advanced across the basin with cold efficiency. Inside the ravine, Mason slammed the emergency shelter shut and shouldered his rifle. His breath came fast now, not from fear, but from knowing this was it. The moment the line between survival and sacrifice vanished. They've got our location, he said, checking the chamber. Thermal scan or audio trace, doesn't matter. We're out of time. IRI's gaze followed the distant vehicles. Her violet eyes didn't flinch. How many? 3 vans. At least 9 men. Maybe 12. All black ops. No insignia. No names. She nodded, as if calculating variables in her mind. I won't let them take you, Mason said. You might not have a choice, IRI replied softly. He turned to her, jaw set, muscles tensed, and for a brief moment, his expression cracked. There was something raw there now. Something he'd buried for too long. Then I'll die making sure they don't get to use you. Mason led her up the north slope, using a broken trail from an old dig site he knew. Halfway up, they heard it, the high-pitched click of a laser drone snapping into scan mode. He shoved her down into a rock crevice and aimed. One shot, clean, precise, dropped the drone from the sky. It exploded mid-air in a brief blossom of blue fire and smoke. But it was too late. The chase had become a fight. The van swerved in from the south. Armed men disembarked, sleek, tactical, faces hidden behind polarized masks. No warnings. No shouts. Just weapons raised. And then, gunfire. It came in sharp, controlled bursts. Mason returned fire, using the rocks for cover, keeping IRI behind him. 2 men dropped. Another flanked from the east. Mason caught him in the shoulder, but not fast enough. The next bullet hit him. Right side, just above the hip. Pain ripped through his body. He dropped hard against the rocks, vision spinning. IRI screamed. It was the first time he heard fear in her voice. She knelt beside him, hands glowing faintly. Her fingers hovered over the wound, then pressed down, not gently. Mason groaned, eyes squeezed shut. I can stop the bleeding, she whispered, but you won't be able to run. Then you run, he rasped. Now. No. You have to. You said you weren't bred. So don't act like someone's property. Be free. I won't leave you here die. You don't owe me anything. Her voice dropped. That's not why I'm staying. She looked at his face, blood smeared across his cheek, the sand sticking to his sweat. Then she leaned in and kissed his forehead. Not romantic. Not desperate. Just real. A gesture older than war. Older than pain. And then she stood up, turned toward the soldiers now closing in, and raised both hands. The men hesitated, weapons still up, but they didn't fire. And that's when it happened. Her skin began to glow, not just a faint shimmer like before, but a full cascade of radiant energy, gold and white and violet, pulsing from within her chest, her spine, her hands. It wasn't light. It was memory turned visible. Symbols danced across her arms. Unknown scripts. Alien glyphs. The soldiers hesitated. One shouted something into a radio. Too late. A shock wave rippled outward from her body, sweeping over the sand with a sound like a broken violin string drawn across the sky. The tech on the soldiers shorted instantly. Visors cracked, rifles sparked, HUDs blinked dead. They staggered back, disoriented. And Mason, half conscious, saw IRI step forward, eyes blazing with layered light. She spoke in a voice that was hers, but not only hers. Thousands of voices overlapped. Ancient, tired, unyielding. You will not take me again. Mason reached out weakly. IRI. She turned to him, voice returning to normal, soft but firm. I've activated a failsafe. A warning. He coughed. What kind of warning? They'll know now. My people. Those still alive. Hidden. He stared at her. You weren't the last? No, she said, kneeling beside him. Only the quietest. Sirens started in the distance. Not military. Civilian. Local. Someone had seen the blast and called it in. Time was running out. I'll carry you, she said. You weigh like 90 pounds, soaking wet. I'm stronger than I look. She lifted him on her shoulder, slowly, carefully. And then they were moving again, Mason groaning with each step, the blood leaving a trail behind them in the sand. He gritted his teeth. I was supposed to save you. You still can, she said. But not with bullets. With a choice. What choice? To believe I'm more than what they made me. They reached a ridge just as a battered civilian truck came into view, a supply runner from a nearby farm, caught in the chaos. Mason raised his hand weakly, and the driver, stunned by the sight of a glowing woman and a blood-soaked soldier, stopped. Please, IRI said. He needs help. The man opened the door without a word. As the truck roared into the desert horizon, carrying them into the unknown, Mason leaned his head back and closed his eyes. He didn't know what came next. He just knew that for the first time in years. He didn't feel like a weapon. He felt human. If you've ever rooted for an impossible love, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more coming. The engine hummed beneath them as the old farm truck tore across the desert highway, leaving behind black smoke and scorched sand. Mason lay across the back seat, barely conscious, his shirt soaked in blood. His breathing was shallow. Each bump in the road sent a flash of pain through his ribs. IRI sat beside him, one hand clutching his, the other pressed gently against his wound, channeling warmth. Not healing, not exactly, but slowing the decay. Buy him time. The driver, a wiry man in his 60s, kept his eyes on the road and didn't speak a word. He hadn't asked who they were. He didn't need to. The explosion in the ravine had lit up local scanners all the way to Nevada. Something off-world had just gone loud. Everyone with a brain was staying out of it. By nightfall, they reached a forgotten shed near an abandoned orchard, one of 100 scattered along the desert's edge, long since claimed by silence and dust. The old man killed the engine, turned to IRI, and said, "You've got until morning." Then I never saw you. She nodded once. Thank you. He didn't reply, just drove off into the dark. Inside, IRI spread out a warm blanket on the floor. She lowered Mason gently onto it. He groaned, but didn't protest. You should have run, he whispered, voice cracked. You would have done the same, she replied. I was trained for this. So was I. She peeled off his jacket and shirt, exposing the ugly, swollen wound on his side. The bullet had torn muscle, but missed the artery, barely. Still, he lost too much blood. She moved her glowing hands over his skin again, and he winced as a strange warmth surged through him. What is that? He muttered. I'm stabilizing your cells. Stimulating clotting. Narithi biology was built to sync with other species. You're syncing with me? Only what I need to help, she said, almost gently. Mason turned his head away. You shouldn't care this much. But I do. The silence between them stretched. Then Mason broke it. I saw what you did back there. That wasn't just some energy burst. That was ancient. Programmed. She looked at him. It was never meant to be used on humans. It was a message, encoded into my bloodline. A warning to any Narithi survivors that the last data vault is active. And if they find you, they'll try to extract the code, even if it kills me. Mason's jaw clenched. Then we keep running. No, she said softly. You keep healing. I will run. He stared at her, furious. Don't you dare do that noble self-sacrifice routine. It's not noble. It's logical. Well, then let me be illogical for once in my goddamn life. She blinked at him. For the first time, her perfect calm cracked. I don't understand you, she said. Yeah, that makes two of us. You fight like you want to die, she said quietly. But you protect like someone who's afraid to lose everything. Mason's eyes darkened. Maybe I already have. He turned away, jaw tight, breath shaky. But IRI reached out and touched his hand again, not glowing this time. Just real. You haven't lost me, she said. Outside, the wind picked up again, hissing through the slats in the wall like a warning. Inside, Mason closed his eyes, surrendering to the weight of her presence beside him, terrifying and gentle all at once. She watched him for a long time, then whispered, more to herself than to him. I don't know how to love like humans do, but I'm trying. The next morning, Mason woke to find her gone. His side burned. His shirt was folded beside him. The door hung open. Footprints in the sand. Fresh. He cursed under his breath, stood, and staggered into the sunrise. He found her half a mile out, standing on a ridge, facing the horizon. "I told you not to run," he growled. She didn't turn around. "I wasn't running. I was calling." He stepped beside her and saw what she meant. In the sky above them, faint like dust at first, strange shapes moved. Craft. 3 of them. Sleek, black, unfamiliar. Not Earth military. Not human. Mason reached for his rifle, but IRI touched his arm. "No," she said. "They're not here to fight. They heard my pulse. Your people. Some of them. Maybe. And they'll help you." "They might," she said. "Or they might want to finish what Earth started." Mason's eyes narrowed. "Then we go together." "I won't risk you," she said. "You already did." He looked at her. "And I survived." They stared at the sky together as the ship slowed. Descending. The wind picked up again, warm, electric. Whatever came next, Mason knew this wasn't just about war anymore. It wasn't even about survival. It was about choice. Hers. His. Together. Or apart. The ships hovered just above the ridge, silent, impossible machines slicing the morning light. Their exteriors shimmered in a way no human alloy could. Not quite visible. Not quite real. Like memories made solid. Mason stood beside IRI, his hand still resting near his weapon, though he didn't raise it. "IRI," he murmured. "You sure about this?" "No," she answered. "But I trust my instinct." "And you." The lead ship pulsed once, a vertical line of soft blue light across its hull, then veered east without descending. The other 2 followed. Within seconds, they were gone, fading back into the sky like ghosts who'd changed their minds. Mason stared after them. "That was it. That was a message," IRI said. "They saw me. They chose not to interfere. For now." "Why?" "Because I'm not just carrying their legacy," she said softly. "I'm changing it." They walked for hours, backtracking along a rarely used maintenance trail. Mason limped, holding his ribs. IRI kept close, occasionally catching him before he stumbled. Eventually, they reached a half-buried structure built into the cliff wall, an abandoned research observatory, long decommissioned, now sand-choked and forgotten by the military. Mason keyed in a code at a side panel. The door stuttered, then hissed open. "How did you know about this place?" IRI asked. "I helped build it. Before the war. Before me." He didn't answer, just stepped inside. The air was stale, but the shelter was secure. Reinforced walls, solar backups, even clean water. Mason collapsed onto a metal bench, groaning. IRI knelt beside him again, checking his pulse. "You're healing slower," she said. "Your body's in conflict." "No surprise," he muttered. "My body's always been trying to kill me. It just got creative." She brushed his hair back from his forehead. "Let me help," she said. "I thought you already were. Not like this." He opened his mouth to protest, but stopped when she placed her palm over his chest. Not hard, not invasive, just contact. A warmth spread through him, deeper than skin, deeper than bone. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, like something sacred was unfolding beneath the surface. He felt her presence move through him in waves. Memory, sorrow, strength, hope. Not words, not images, feelings. He saw fragments. A crystal city in ruins. Children born under twin moons. A mother's last breath. Isolation. Cold. Centuries of purpose coded into blood. He flinched. "IRI, this is too much." She pulled her hand away instantly. "I'm sorry. I thought." "No," he said quickly. "Don't stop. I just wasn't ready." He looked at her. Eyes raw now, voice breaking. "You carry so much. I was never meant to carry it alone." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken understanding. She sat beside him, not touching now, just near. And when he finally spoke again, it wasn't from fear. It was from something closer to surrender. "If I asked you to stay here, not for the mission, not for the war, but just with me, what would you say?" She looked at him, searching his face. Then quietly, "I'd say I've been waiting for someone to ask me that since the day I was taken." He exhaled, eyes closed. It wasn't a confession. It was a release. The guilt, the anger, the programmed duty. Gone. Replaced by something far more dangerous and far more alive. Later, as night fell, Mason found IRI standing on the observatory roof, staring at the stars. Her hair moved in the wind like silk catching fire. He walked up behind her. "You're not just beautiful," he said. She turned. "You're terrifying. In the best possible way." She stepped closer. "You make me feel unfinished," she whispered. "Like I was waiting for something I couldn't define. And now I'm afraid to lose it." "You won't," Mason said. "Not unless you choose to." "Then I won't." They didn't kiss. Not yet. What passed between them was quieter. She pressed her forehead to his, a Narithi gesture of bonding, of choice. He closed his eyes and leaned in. For a moment, the world narrowed to breath and heartbeat and heat. And in that silence, something unspoken bloomed between them. Not fate, not destiny, just two broken souls who chose each other anyway. Far off in the desert, the sky flickered again. The Narithi had seen. So had others. Word was spreading. This wasn't over. But for now, they had this moment. And for the first time, they weren't running. The observatory was quiet. Too quiet. IRI sat on the edge of the cot, fingers interlocked, eyes fixed on the concrete floor. Mason stood near the doorway, rifle cradled in his arms, scanning the monitor one last time. That's when he saw it. A ping. Not from orbit. Not from Narithi Tech. Human. Inbound. "They found us," he said. She didn't flinch. "How many?" "Enough to make this a suicide standoff." He turned toward her. His jaw clenched. He looked older now. Not because of fear. Because of weight. IRI stood, her voice calm. "We have one advantage. They don't know I've fully awakened." Mason shook his head. "You're not using that energy again. It nearly destroyed you last time. I can control it now. And if they kill you before you get the chance, then you run." "No," he said flatly. "I'm not running from this. Not from you." They heard the dropjets moments later. A low whine, then a thump of boots hitting the dirt. Dozens of them. No hesitation. No warning. Just war. Mason pulled her close. "I need to tell you something. There's no time. I don't care." He looked her in the eyes. Hard, fast, desperate. "I don't know what the hell this is between us, or where it's going, or if I'll even live through the next 5 minutes. But if I die without telling you." She kissed him. Fierce. Final. Real. And then whispered, "Then I would have told you first." The walls shook. Flashbangs rained down through the vents. Smoke. Shouts. Lights cut. They moved like instinct. Mason swept through the side corridors, laying suppressive fire, keeping the enemy from flanking. IRI followed close, no longer hiding her light. Her skin shimmered like moonlight on water. Her hands burned with symbols. Then they cornered them. Back wall. Nowhere left to run. 10 soldiers. Rifles raised. A voice crackled from one of the helmets. "Stand down, Carter. We don't want you. Just the alien." Mason stepped in front of her. "You'll have to kill me. That could be arranged." They fired. And everything went white. But it wasn't death. It was her. IRI raised her hands, and the energy surged outward, not in a blast, but in a field. Controlled. Precise. Every rifle froze mid-fire. Every bullet halted in air, vibrating with atomic strain. Mason stared, breathless. "What are you?" Her eyes glowed. Her voice dropped. "I am not a weapon." She stepped forward. "I am a choice." And then, she dropped the field. All at once. Bullets fell like rain. Guns shattered. Men screamed, not in pain, but in memory. She was in their minds, showing them fragments of her world, her people, their fall, their innocence. She overwhelmed them not with force, but truth. Half of them collapsed. The others fled. Only one man remained. Black visor, rank above the rest. He stepped forward slowly, removing his helmet. Mason stiffened. "General Drax," he muttered. "You sick bastard." The general's face was pale, stern. "You've compromised Earth's security, harboring a known asset. You've sentenced yourself. I've saved a life. You've endangered billions." IRI stepped forward, voice like fire wrapped in silk. "Your people started this war. We came to terraform together. Your governments turn on us." "Lies," Drax snapped. "You're a parasite," with a smile. "Then shoot me," she said. Drax raised his weapon. Mason moved. Bang. Not Drax's shot. IRI's body jerked forward, eyes wide. Blood. Mason screamed. "No, no, no, no." He caught her as she fell. The general was gone, vanished in the chaos. The soldiers gone. Only Mason and IRI remained in the ruins. Her light flickered. Mason, she whispered. No, don't talk. He held pressure to her wound. You can fix this. You're strong. You can sink. She shook her head. Too deep. My systems are failing. He clenched his teeth. Then merge. Do it. Now. Whatever it takes. I accept it. I want it. She blinked, slowly. Are you sure? Tears streamed down his face. Yes. She raised her hand, weak now, and placed it over his heart. And everything changed. Not pain. Not fear. Just connection. Mason felt her presence pour into him. Not as an invader, but as a mirror. Her memories, her thoughts, her grief. He became her, even as she faded. Their minds linked. One breath. One heartbeat. She exhaled one last time, and her body went still. But Mason remained, and his eyes, they now glowed violet. Dawn broke slow over the desert, bleeding light across shattered glass and broken stone. The observatory, once quiet, now stood half-collapsed, its walls torn by blast fire, its instruments melted into scrap. Mason sat alone in the wreckage, eyes open, unmoving. Smoke curled from what was left of the console room. He didn't feel the heat, or the wind, or the pain in his side. He only felt her. Not beside him. Not gone. Inside. IRI was there. In every breath. Every heartbeat. Every memory that now wasn't just his. He saw the desert, not just with human eyes, but with a different kind of sight. Waves of temperature. Micro-vibrations in the air. Subtle frequency shifts in the earth. It was overwhelming. And yet, it felt right. He reached out slowly, placing his palm against the cracked wall. The stone pulsed softly beneath his skin, like it was speaking. He pulled back, startled, then laughed once. Dry. Hollow. Well, he muttered. Guess I'm not just a grunt anymore. He rose to his feet, body still weak, but stable. The bullet wound had sealed. Not perfectly, but far faster than any human healing would allow. Whatever IRI had done, it had saved him. And changed him. Forever. Outside, the bodies were gone. The soldiers who'd fallen under IRI's psychic surge had vanished into retreat or retrieval. But they'd leave no report. No trace. Who would believe them? Who would dare? Mason walked to the ridge, the wind pressing against his face like a test. The sky was clear now. No Narithi ships. No satellites. Just silence. He closed his eyes. And for the first time, he heard her. I'm still here. Not a voice in his ear, a presence in his mind. Soft, gentle, alive. IRI, he whispered. A part of me, a memory thread, my choice. He touched his chest, not to check his pulse, but to feel her. You said merging required acceptance, and you accepted me, completely. I left only what you could carry. He smiled bitterly. I would have carried all of you. You already do. The wind shifted. A low hum vibrated through the rocks. Mason looked out across the desert and saw, in the far distance, a black aircraft coasting low toward the horizon. Not a threat, just a shadow. The world would keep moving. But now, he wasn't just part of it. He was tied to something bigger. He went back inside and began gathering what he could. Medical supplies, dried food, solar batteries. Every movement now felt deliberate. Sharper. He was still human, but enhanced. Not in power. In clarity. IRI had given him more than memories. She had given him purpose. He found her necklace near the cot, a strange silver arc with symbols etched across the surface. Not decorative, a Narithi identity marker. He slid it into his pocket. They'll come again, she said inside his mind. Humans. Narithi. Others. Some to kill. Some to learn. I'll be ready. Not alone. He paused. You mean them? I mean us. Mason stood at the shattered doorway of the observatory and looked out into the world. No orders. No backup. No commander. Just him. And the voice of the woman he couldn't save. But who had saved him? And though his heart still ached with loss, it beat stronger now. Not because it was whole, but because it was shared. The gas station on the edge of nowhere had no name. Just a flickering, open sign, half lit by a solar battery, and a rack of stale candy melting under desert heat. Mason stood beside a payphone that didn't work, sipping warm water from a plastic bottle. His eyes scanned the horizon, not because he expected enemies, but because his mind wouldn't let him stop. His body had changed. He didn't bleed like he used to. Didn't sleep like he used to. Didn't fear like he used to. But he still felt. Especially when he was still. Especially when he thought of her. This body of yours. Ours, she corrected. Her voice echoed in his mind now, with less frequency. Not because she was fading, but because she was resting. IRI wasn't just a memory. She was a presence, stored in neural pathways, like an echo that refused to go silent. Sometimes she spoke when he needed her. Sometimes she just listened. And sometimes, in the middle of a hot afternoon like this one, she would whisper something like, "I would have liked to see your earth in peace." He'd smile, close his eyes, and imagine her walking barefoot through sand, not running from anything, just being. He walked past the pumps and caught his reflection in the cracked mirror above the restroom door. He didn't recognize his face anymore. His eyes were still green, but flecked now with threads of violet. A subtle glow lived beneath the skin of his neck, barely visible unless the light hit it right. He looked haunted, but not broken, more like reforged. Inside his chest, where rage used to burn, something else had taken root. Not revenge, not purpose, just truth. A truth he never believed in until her. The truth that love wasn't always gentle. That sometimes it arrived wrapped in war, stitched to trauma, riding on the back of your worst day. That sometimes the thing that saves you doesn't even speak your language, but looks you in the eyes and stays anyway. He thought of that night in the observatory, her hands against his chest, her final breath becoming part of his own. He thought of the light, the memory flood, the impossible calm as she merged with him, not to dominate, but to trust. That was the most human thing of all. Not intelligence, not ambition, trust. She gave him everything without knowing what he'd do with it, and he chose to protect it. Even now, especially now. He walked for hours that day, leaving the gas station behind, avoiding roads, keeping out of sight. He passed through towns too small to notice him, traded false names for food and shelter, helped fix a power generator in exchange for silence. But every step forward felt less like hiding, and more like becoming. One night, he stopped near an abandoned satellite relay and looked up at the sky. There were no stars that night, just clouds. He still raised his hand anyway. "IRI," he whispered. "I don't know if I'm doing this right. You're alive. That's the start." He smiled. "You always sound wiser when I'm most lost. That's because you only hear me when your noise quiets down." He sat on a concrete slab, watching the wind stir the weeds around his boots. And for the first time, he said it out loud, without shame, without fear, without regret. "I loved you." There was silence. Then, like a breath on his soul, "I know." A tear slid down his cheek, but he didn't wipe it away. Not this time. Let fall. Let mean something. Let the world know he didn't survive just to forget. He stood, slung his pack over his shoulder, adjusted the grip of the modified rifle, now keyed to his altered biometrics, and faced north, toward whatever came next. Not because he knew what was waiting, but because she would have walked with him. And maybe, in a way, she still was. Snow fell in soft spirals over the black pines. Mason adjusted his scarf, tightening it against the wind as he stepped into the clearing. The cold didn't bother him like it used to. His altered blood adapted faster now, responded quicker to stress. He didn't need maps anymore. He could feel things most people couldn't: magnetic pulses, static distortions, the hum of devices before they powered on. But today, everything was quiet, and that meant it was safe enough to activate the beacon. He reached into his coat and pulled out a smooth silver cylinder etched with Narithi script, the one artifact IRI had managed to encode fully before she died. Except she hadn't died. Not really. She lived in his neural pathways. She lived in his muscle memory, his dreams, his impulses, his instincts. And sometimes, when the static between worlds got thin, she spoke. "They're close." "I know," Mason said. He pressed the cylinder into the snow. A ripple of energy pulsed outward, invisible to human eyes, but unmistakable to the few survivors who still listened for Narithi resonance. It was a signal, a message, not a cry for help, a choice. Within an hour, they came. 3 cloaked figures, tall, robed, cautious. Not Narithi, not human. Something between. Hybrids like him, or different threads of what was left. One spoke. "You are Carter?" He nodded. "We received your coordinates. You were supposed to be dead." "I was." The figure's head tilted. Then what are you now? Mason smiled, small, tired, real. A bridge. They led him to a hidden structure embedded beneath the ice. Not a base, not a lab. A haven. Inside, data cores, living quarters, training areas. Survivors. Scientists. Children. No flags. No insignias. Just people no longer pretending the old world made sense. They gave him a place to rest. Food. Space. And after a week of silence, they asked him to speak. To explain what he carried. Who she was. What he'd become. He told them everything. He told it simply. Honestly. And when he was done, the room was quiet. Not because they didn't believe him, but because they did. That night, he stood alone on the landing pad, looking up at stars no one had named yet. And he heard her. Not in his head. Not imagined. Beside him. Just a whisper. You kept going. He didn't turn around. He didn't need to. I had to. I'm proud of you. He smiled. And finally said the words he'd held back for months. I miss you. You don't have to. I'm right here. And in that cold, beneath unknown constellations, with snow falling around him like static from another world, he closed his eyes and fell whole. If this story moved you, if you've ever believed love could change what war tried to destroy, leave a comment, share the story, and subscribe for more. Because sometimes the most alien thing in the universe is what makes us human.